Hey everybody, I am Kevin Ioli from Yahoo Sports, and my guest right now is a guy, not only one of the greatest fighters in UFC history, one of the greatest commentators on the UFC on ESPN shows. Now he's a published author. I don't know if it's a New York Times bestseller yet, but this guy does a little bit of everything. My friend Michael Bisping. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well, Kevin. Thank you very much. That's quite the intro. I really appreciate it. And as you say, sometimes people they say, "Oh, author. Look at you, Mr. Big Time. You're an author now," which always makes me laugh. But I guess that is accurate. Thank you.
Can you even read books with that eye of yours in there?
Yeah, well, fortunately, yeah. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy. That's why I used to get punched in the face for a living. So I can read them, but I don't know if the words sink in, Kevin. Come on, I'm a fighter.
If we get beyond 5 letters, then Mike is lost out there.
Mike, give me a break. Come on.
I'll tell you, it was a fantastic read. A lot of incredible stories. Let's start here. What was the genesis? Why did you want to do this in the first place? Not everybody writes an autobiography. What was it for you?
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there was a few people in England over the years, hitting me up to do books. There was a couple of different publishers and a couple of authors wanting to do that, and I was still fighting. I was still active. And I said to them then, listen, I'm going back years when I first came off the Ultimate Fighter. I'm like, well, there's nothing to tell yet. I'm still very much at the start of my career. And then the same guy kept coming back. I remember 2010, 2012. I'm like, I'm obviously by then I'm like, well, the story isn't finished. I'm still going, Fortunately, I was able to win the belt and things like that. So that was good. And then you retire. I'm happy that I've managed to stay busy. But, my agent came to me with I'll be honest, he came to me with a decent offer. So there was that side of things as well. I'll be honest, there was the monetary side. But also for me, I kind of feel like I got a good story and I wanted to tell it. I wanted to tell the truth. And the pieces all came together. Obviously, I wrote it with Anthony Evans. I've known Ant for a long time. He's a great guy. And he's the perfect guy to write this book. Because we had another publishing house come to the table, and he brought another author to the table. And I sat with this guy for a day or so, and he wrote, a little treatment, if you will. And when he sent it to me, I hated it. I detested it. Not only was the style of it not good, because it was just going down the typical hard man style, like these tough guy books, that's not what I wanted to do. I detest those type of books. And then also he was just flat out lying, making things up to romanticize certain things and bullshitting. So I'm like, okay, this isn't the guy. And then me and Ant got talking, and there you go. Quitters never win. That's the product.
I have been a friend of Ant's for many, many years, and I respect his talent a lot. I talked to him during the production of the book as you guys were writing it, and he was telling me some of these stories, and it was blowing me away as he was telling me these stories. It's like you lived a movie in real life almost.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, a lot of people say that. The response from the book has been mind-blowing, to be honest. I get so many messages every day on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. People saying they're inspired and things like that. And that was never, I didn't set out to inspire people. I just thought, all right, this offer came along and I took advantage of it, and we wrote the book. And it turns out, some people, because I had a lot of adversity in my life, certainly in my fight career, I got to #1 contender, and then I lost some fights, I had some bad knockouts, I had some injuries, but I guess that's all I was ever good at. So I had to stick at it.
I've covered your career since the beginning, and I found it really engrossing, not just because of the things that I knew about, but things that I didn't know about. And I guess, the one thing everybody wants to ask you about this, you had a hitman coming after you and show up to get after you. Tell that story a little bit. And that almost sounds like it's too fanciful to believe.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it definitely did happen. It was a summer's night. I'd been out, back in my partying days, if you will. I'd been out on a couple of heavy nights out, and then one Saturday night. I'd been out Thursday, Friday night. Saturday night, I was too tired. So I said, guys, boys, I'm going home. So I was living on my own. I was about 17 or 18 at the time. I'll try and make this quick. And I'm sitting on the couch, and I just hear just a very, very faint knocking. I'm thinking, did I hear that? I carry on watching TV. A minute later, a very faint knocking. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I mute the TV. And I sit there and there's nothing. And I'm about to press, the noise on the TV again, turn up the volume. And then once again, a little very, very faint knocking, but it was unusual because, they were waiting like 5 minutes in between knocks. I'm like, well, that is strange. So I walk through the kitchen to the back door, and I'm standing right behind the door, and there's no noise. I kind of crept up, and I'm standing there, kind of freaked out, and then sure enough, a very, very faint knock. I'm like, wow. It brings, gives me goosebumps even telling the story. And so I said, hello? And I hear back a muffled hello. And I'm like, who is it? And they say, John. And I'm like, John? I don't know a John. I'm like, John who? And they go, John. As if like, John. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's John. I open the door. I get sprayed in the face with CS gas. I guess you guys will call it mace.
Mace, yeah.
I fall back. I'm holding my eyes like this. I'm like, ugh. And then when I open my eyes, there's a guy stood there, black boots, black pants, black bomber jacket, and a black Ku Klux Klan hood, right, over his face, holding a canister of gasoline, throwing gasoline all over the place. And I start freaking out. I'm screaming my head off. I was 17. I was a kid, but you think in those situations you're going to be a tough guy, but I shit my pants and I don't mind saying it.
Right.
And like behind me there was like a big block of knives. I could have pulled out a knife or whatever, but I wasn't thinking straight. I was so terrified. And he's staring at me and he's trying to light matches. And I'm like, holy shit. So I run into the front room and I shut the door. I pick up the phone, I call the cops, 999. I'm like, help, someone's trying to kill me. They're like, calm down, sir. Do you need fire, ambulance, or police? I'm like, Jesus Christ, send someone to 88 Boulders right now. Anyway, I hang up. But the whole time I was doing this, he was just staring at me, not moving, just watching my movements. And then I call up a friend of mine, and I said, you got to get the cops down there quick. I said, blah, 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 blah. And when I was having this conversation, it's like he realised that I was actually talking to somebody. So he drops the gasoline and pulls out a lump hammer from inside his jacket, comes walking forwards towards me. So I shut the door. I've got the phone in one hand, and I shut the door here with my other hand. Right? It was just a big pane of glass and a small little wood surround, like a 70s style door. Shitty apartment that I lived in. And I put money there.
Come on.
And anyway, so I'm holding the door, and I've got the phone in my hand. And I'm like, and he comes up and he presses his face right into the glass and he's going ding, 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 like just like tapping on the window, on the glass with a hammer. And I was just like, oh my God, who could this be? And my mind raced a million times and I thought it was this one guy. So the name's changed in the book. It wasn't Bruno. That was Anthony Evans' Bruno. I don't know a single person called Bruno. Who the hell's called Bruno?
Bruno Sammartino, the former WWF champion. Okay.
Yeah, Frank Bruno. Do you know what I mean? Or the boxer. But I'm like, I had to call him Bruno. I didn't want to say the real name. Okay. And then so I say, Bruno. And then when I said that, all right, bye, Elliot Mendoza. He takes a step back. And when he took a step back, that gave me confidence because I thought, it's bloody this guy. And we'd had a few fights. I'd done this guy in before. I'm like, this piece of shit's come here with a hood on to get me. So that gave me confidence. He swung the hammer and ran out of the house and got away. When the cops came and they did forensic, they found that during the day when I'd been out, he'd climbed through the bedroom window, and where the phone was, there's a phone line. Well, there's a cable, and he cut that cable. But he'd actually disconnected the doorbell. He hadn't disconnected the phone, he disconnected the doorbell. So that's why when I was on the phone, he wasn't quite kind of sure I was talking to somebody. He's probably thinking, let's just watch this asshole, watch him pretend to be on the phone. Yeah. But yeah, there you go. That's one of, unfortunately, many scenarios in my life.
Your career that you detail a lot in the book, I think was a fascinating career. And, I want to ask you about one of the fights that, wasn't your biggest fight, but to me was one that still this day people talk about. That was the Matt Hamill fight in London.
Yes.
And that was kind of a fight that I think was a kind of a turning point for you in your career to a certain degree. Wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I was hated universally after that fight. Yeah. I came off the Ultimate Fighter, and I remember I fought at UFC 66 at the MGM Grand, and I walked out, and I got a really, really positive response from the crowd, and I thought, nobody's going to know who I am, because of the TV show, people knew who I was, and I was ignorant to that because I lived in the UK, and that was great. But as I say, that all changed after that one fight. I fought Matt Hamill. For those that don't know, he's profoundly deaf. And Matt was a world champion freestyle wrestler, world champion Greco wrestler. And as a Brit, I'd never really wrestled a day in my life. So I should have gave him more respect. I thought it was going to be a walk in the park. I really did. I trained my ass off for that fight. I went out to Big Bear, California, trained with Rampage and his whole team. So I was prepared. But I thought it was going to be easy, and I walked out, and I was just too full of myself. I was too cocky. I remember I was waving at my wife and like having a laugh with Dana and stuff. And he said fight, and he came at me, and he beat the piss out of me. I remember at one point he had me in a headlock, kind of like you would do to your little brother when you're kids, and he was just punching me in the face, and I had blood pouring out my nose. And I remember thinking, shit, this isn't going to plan. This is not how I saw this fight going down. Anyway, so then I rallied, and the second and third rounds were close. I got a decision, a split decision. It was super, super close. And what I should have said when I got on the microphone was, wow, man, he just kicked my ass. Said that was a really, really close fight. Matt, you're a warrior, yada, 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 give him respect. But being a young kid, being a punk, and I honestly thought I was going to.
And you were at home, so you had the crowd going.
Yeah. But I thought I was going to walk through this guy. So I kind of already planned what I was going to say, because a lot of people, because he got injured on the Ultimate Fighter, and a lot of people claim that he was the real of the Ultimate Fighter. So I said, who's the real winner of the Ultimate Fighter? The same one he always was, which is such a douchebag thing to say after such a close fight that some people thought he won, So, but what do? You live and learn, you know what I mean?
How has that affected you now? You've been through that. You know what fighter emotions are like. Now that you're in the ring interviewing fighters afterwards, right? So that's a tough moment. You know emotions are high because you were there just a couple of years ago. So how does that affect the way you interview them and the questions you ask? And are you asking your own questions, or do they tell you what to ask?
Generally, it's my own questions. Sometimes they might, if there's something very specific that they want to know, they'll get in my ear and they'll say, I need to have some earpieces molded though, because the kid, with my cauliflower ears and stuff, they pop out all the time, and I can't hear them. And then I walk out like, Mike, we were saying ask this, and I'm like, shit, me and my bloody ears. But yeah, listen, I am conscious of that, of course. For me, sometimes you've just been through a hard fight, emotions are high, you're still full of adrenaline. So you do take that into account when you're asking questions, for sure.
I'm talking to Mike Bisping, the author of Quitters Never Win, now one of the all-time winningest fighters in UFC history, UFC Hall of Famer. Blah, blah, blah. Could go on and on and on. It's just, I covered this career, and it's almost hard to believe. I have to tell you, I doubted a lot of your career. I kept saying, Mike is good, but he can't go to this level. And then you would win a fight there, and I said, well, he's never going to go to this level. And your toughness was never in question, but, to do what you did against Luke Rockhold, because I remember the first fight you had with Rockhold, and it was not a pretty fight on your behalf. I guess the question is, how did you ever get the confidence to believe that you could turn it around, especially on short notice like that dramatically?
So, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to get people in trouble, but here's the reality. I'm pretty much blind. In fact, I'm blind in one eye, right? And, when I fought Luke Rockhold the first time, I was like that. I was visually impaired. And as luck would have it, the final training session before I flew out to Australia, I got cut. I got elbowed in sparring. I always spar too much. I shouldn't be sparring that close to a fight, but I did. And I got caught with an elbow, or maybe it was a head, I'm not sure. And it opened up a cut on my eyelid. And I had about 7 stitches in my eyelid. And I remember on the day going to the fight, I go to the arena. One of the UFC staff runs up and says, Mike, the doctor needs to see you. I'm like, why is it? It's your eye. And I thought, because I was always terrified I was going to get pulled from fights because of my eye. You know what I mean? Because they said, listen, it's not safe for you to fight. So when they said the doctor wants to see you because of your eye, I was terrified. I thought, shit, here we go. My worst nightmare is going to come true. And they said, no, we just want to pull the stitches out. We want to pull the stitches. You can't fight with stitches in your eye. And I'm like, oh, shit, well, that makes sense. So in that fight, pretty quick into the fight, he headbutts me. He was going for a takedown, whatever, call it whatever you will. But Luke referenced the stitches a couple of times where we squared up, and he gave me a little headbutt, and it opened up the cut completely. And the blood was pouring into my eye. It was in my eyelids. The blood was coming into my eye, and all I could see was red. Literally all I could see was red. So I'd wipe away the blood, and then I could see a little bit, but it was like if you poured paint on a car windshield and you put the windscreen wipers on. It would just smear. So the blood was smearing into my hand, and I kind of see, and then I'd wipe it, I could see a bit, and then it'd bleed back in, and that's what was going on. And in one of those transitions, I must have got kicked in the head, but I had no idea what hit me at the time. All I knew was that I'd lost. Now, I still wanted to continue fighting, so I couldn't come out and tell the truth about what happened and how bad I couldn't see. Because otherwise, that's it. License revoked. No more career, no fighting, no looking after the family. So I had to keep that quiet. But I knew I could compete with this guy. I sparred him prior to this a while ago, and I'd more than held my own. So I knew
that was a point of contention during the build-up of that fight.
Of course it was, yeah. Because I did a TV show and they asked me, how did that sparring session go? And he was Strikeforce champion at the time. And I said, well, you shouldn't really talk about sparring. I said, but put it like this, I'm the unofficial Strikeforce champion. And it was just a little joke, but he got all bent out of shape over it. But I thought it was funny. So anyway, to answer your question, I knew I could do better than what I showed in that. Now, of course, 2 weeks' notice isn't ideal for anybody, but it is what it is. You've got to take these chances.
It was just an amazing performance. What would you say that's the high? Like, was there something, was fighting and beating Anderson Silva ahead of that, or was coming back against Dan Henderson? You talk about that in the book, getting knocked out by Dan Henderson. Was beating him in England over winning the title, or was the title the pinnacle?
Yeah, well, you mentioned all three of them there, really. 2016 was a tremendous year for me. I won the belt. Well, no, I fought Anderson Silva because, as you said before, and rightly so, I was aware what journalists said about my career. Good fighter, never be champion, he can't win the big ones. So when I fought Anderson Silva, a guy that I wanted to fight for so long, I trained for that fight like no other. I was so disciplined with my diet. Normally you cheat a little bit here and there, you sneak in a little bowl of ice cream, maybe a little glass of wine here and there, but I was on point. I was so disciplined for that fight because I thought, I'm beating this guy in London. I'm going to beat him. And I did, and it was an epic fight. It was back and forth. So that was like the high point of my career. But then I get to fight Luke Rockhold and I win the belt. I'm like, shit, well, there's the high point. But then I go back to Manchester, to my home city, as the champion, fight Dan Henderson in a rematch, and that was a good fight as well. So I think that was taking the belt and fighting back in England for me. But, I had a good career. I'm proud of it. All the ups and downs are what made it so good, But that's just typical of my life. I never like to do things the easy way.
I'm going to ask you one more fight question, and then we'll end it with your podcasting career. You fought Georges St-Pierre, and GSP was able to beat you. I actually picked against the great GSP in that fight. I picked you to win that fight. And I don't know if it was because Anthony Evans was chirping in my ear, but I looked at that fight and I said, George... hasn't been fighting for a while. Mike is a big, strong guy, and I thought you would maybe be able to hurt him in the stand up in the fight. And I think you had your moments in that fight for a while. Ultimately, where do you think it went wrong? Because there was a point where the fight could have gone either way, and then sort of it went his way. What switched in your mind?
Okay, well, I'm going to give you another quick story here. It's in the book, but. Give the listeners a little taste. And this isn't me making an excuse, right? Georges St-Pierre is one of the greatest fighters we've ever seen. I'm a huge fan of the guy. I feel like he's a real inspiration to young children on how you should model your career, how you should look after yourself. He's a consummate professional, and there's not a better man that I would have preferred to take the title off me. So, I'm not taking anything away from George, but I had a tremendous training camp for that fight, and I felt on top of the world. I was knocking everybody out in sparring. You shouldn't talk about that shit, but I was. It's just the facts. On the final day, I was going to fly off to New York the next morning. I had a really hard sparring session, and this guy tries for a double leg takedown like his life depended on it. Picked me up in the air, slammed me down, and his shoulder went right into my ribs. And I just felt a tearing sound, and I screamed out in the gym, "Fuck!" at the top of my voice, because I knew what I'd done. I'd torn the cartilage or broken a rib, something bad. I knew it instantly. I went to see the doctor, and he did, MRI and this, and I said, "Yeah, you're gonna be in pain for about 2 months, we think." I'm like, shit, well, I've got a world title fight next week. And George is a big pay-per-view star. This was a big payday for me. There's no way I was pulling out of this fight. No way. So he said, what you can do, you can inject yourself with lidocaine, and that will numb the areas. You won't feel it for the fight. So he gives me a needle of lidocaine, and I take it with me to New York. But obviously, I don't want to be cheating, so I go and speak to the UFC. I say, listen, I tell them the situation, and they say, well, don't share this. You don't want to share that you're injured. And I think long and hard about this before you go to the commission, Michael, because while lidocaine is not a banned substance, if you tell the commission, the New York commission especially, the reason why you want to do this, they're going to class you as injured, and they're going to pull you from the fight. Right. So they said, we'll pretend this conversation never happened. I won't say the member of staff that it was that I was talking to, but he said, we'll pretend this conversation never happened, and it's up to you if you want to speak to the commission. So I thought, well, I can't speak to the commission. And my doctor texted me, and I said, yeah. I said, it's out the window. He said, well, I'll tell you what we can do, Mike. When you get to the arena, FaceTime me, and I'll talk you through it. He said, you can inject yourself. He said, but be careful, because if you get it wrong, the area where it's at, if you do it wrong, you're going to puncture a lung. Okay, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, no pressure. So anyway, so this was what I was going to do. And I go to Madison Square Garden, we walk in, you got all the cameras following you, I'm in the room, you got all the commission members, and I'm like, right, now it's time. I've got to go to the bathroom, and I've got to smuggle out a syringe out of my bag and go to the bathroom. And I was like, just the thought of doing this, I thought, this is ludicrous.
Who would ever think of this? Yeah.
I'm like, I can't do this. I cannot go through this. So I abandoned that. And I went out there, and a lot of people were like, you seemed a little off, Matt. Your movement wasn't too good. I'm like, well, yeah, no shit, because I was in agony with my ribs. As the fight got on a little bit, and you start taking blows and stuff, the adrenaline kicks in. I was able to move a little better. I had a terrible first round. Second round, I did okay. But I don't see out of this side. And George knew that, and he targeted it. He even said on the microphone afterwards, he said, we knew we couldn't see it. He couldn't see on that side. So we targeted. And a lot of people say, are you mad at George for that? I'm like, no, listen. All's fair in love and war. We're in there. We're trying to do each other damage. If I know somebody's got a weakness, I'm going to attack it. It's a fair play to George. But yeah, that was that.
Unbelievable. You can't miss this book, Quitters Never Win, by Michael Bisping. Mike, before I let you go, I love your podcast. I wrote a story about it. I'm a big podcast listener, and I kind of switch. I'll listen to a podcast for a couple of months, and then I switch and go on to another one. But I love, Believe You Me, your podcast with Luis Gomez. How did you come up with this idea? And I mean, it is really, really good. I mean, so is this something that could develop into being your full-time job?
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And by the way, we're doing this. You got to come on as a guest. You got to call in or video call in sometime. I would love that.
You tell me when I'll do it.
You know combat sports like no other, so please. So I used to do a radio show on Sirius XM. Because of my eye injury, which happened in 2013, I knew I was always on borrowed time. Right. So I was trying to do as many different things as I could. I was trying to diversify as much as possible. So, when the day came, I'd set myself up in another area. So I was working as an analyst. I was trying to, do radio. I was trying to become an actor and just doing whatever I could to start another career. Because whilst the limelight's on you, people will give a shit. But when it's done, that's it, you're done, So I was using that platform while I had it. So I was doing the radio show at Sirius XM. Sirius XM, the amount of money that they made, they are cheap. They are so cheap.
We're not making a living from them, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah. I was trying to get a pay rise. We were arguing about the cost of a pizza. Do you know what I mean? It was like $25. I'm like, what is going on? Anyway, Louis J. Gomez, you better say the J. If you don't say the J, he gets very pissed off, which is very petty and bougie. But he said, Mike, because he had a podcast network. He said, Mike, well, we should do a podcast. He said, you'll make way more money. I'm like, all right, screw it then. So we started doing the podcast. And so I didn't want to do a podcast because every man and their dog has a podcast. I thought being on Sirius XM holds a little more clout, a little more weight. But we started doing the podcast, and it's a lot of fun, and people enjoy it. And we got a good, we get like 200,000 downloads per episode now, so we're growing all the time, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and as I said, people like it. If they didn't like it, I wouldn't do it, But the problem is with the podcast, because that can be controversial enough as it is, and Lewis, he thrives on controversy. He's kind of like a shock stand-up comedian, you know what I mean? And he pushes it a little too much.
And he's a little conspiracy theorist too.
Pardon me?
He's a conspiracy theorist too.
Oh God, yeah. So he'll start going on, and then I join in, and he brings out that side of me, and then sometimes I finish. Just like I'm sitting here now, I click off the microphone, and I'm like, did I really say that? Oh, shit, I'm going to get shit for that one tomorrow. But anyway, believe you me, check it out, anyone that's listening to this.
So Quitters Never Win is your book. Where can people get it? All bookstores, obviously. What about Kindles and iPads and all that stuff?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you can download it on there. Obviously, Amazon, online. Everybody seems to be buying it online. Everything's online these days. I'm assuming all bookstores. I don't know. I'm going to shock you here, Kevin, but I don't frequent bookstores too much, so I'm yet to look. I haven't gone in a bookstore yet and seen it. I would like to do that. That would feel good, actually. In fact, I'm going to go down to Barnes & Noble after this, just to give myself a little pat on the back.
Ask them if they got a Michael Bisping book in there.
Yes, excuse me. Do you know what? A lot of people say they're trying to buy it and they can't find it. So I'm going to have to call the publishers and come out of retirement.
Make sure we get it. Mike, great stuff. Always appreciate you. When are we going to see you on television next?
I will be in, where are we next? Rio Rancho. I'll be in Rio Rancho next week, and then I'll be doing the desk. And then a couple of weeks after that, I'll be in Norfolk, Virginia, commentating. So tune in, check it out.
That is Mike Bisping, UFC Hall of Famer, one of the good guys in the sport. Mike, thanks so much.
Pleasure, Kevin. And I'm serious. We want you on the podcast very soon.
Let's talk about it later.